It's 8 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order for November. Let's see. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was reading the minutes of the November meeting. Any additions or corrections to the November 27th meeting minutes? Hearing none. They'll be approved as published. Approval for airport vouchers totaling $82,000, item number 2.
Make a motion to approve the vouchers.
Okay, motion's made. Any second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on those? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Lind.
Aye.
Blazik.
Aye.
Lind.
Aye.
Haugen.
Aye. Okay, item number 3, individual vouchers, A through G. Any one want to look at those individually or approve them en masse?
In mass, however you'd like to
Yeah.
do it.
The property taxes for the drain taxes for the Cass County stuff.
Yes.
Is that, did we straighten all that out with the city? Are we gonna get double billed on that stuff, or is that just a single item thing?
Are you talking for the stormwater? Or
Yeah, the stormwater.
Okay, that's not included in here. That hasn't been billed yet. That
Okay.
will be in January.
Okay.
So the property taxes there, we're paying the property taxes for our tenant farmers. We changed that a number of years ago because we changed all the time and keeping up with the county, so we took that over. But then the drain taxes are pretty standard.
Okay.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second it.
Very good. Items A through G.
I'll just mention that the special assessments that are on there, those were paid yesterday. That's for our share of County Road 20, pretty much around the entrance into where the new National Guard facility will be. And at some point, I'll work with Colonel Johnson to see how much that the Guard will be able to reimburse us.
The Guard normally has to go through this to the state, to the legislature to get that approved.
Correct.
And then it takes a while. That's all right, call for the vote on items A through G.
Lind.
Aye.
Blazik.
Aye.
Lind.
Yes.
Haugen.
Aye. Okay, number 4, communications from COGI.
Okay, Kogi's on the second floor of the East Terminal, and they've requested a 12-month extension to their lease. It was actually effective December 1st of this year. Lease is all ready, and 3% escalator as standard, and your
Okay.
concurrence would be appreciated.
So moved.
Second it.
Move in a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Number 5, approve the East Side Terminal lease extension for Altig Inc., subject to review.
Subject to review. So we've had some initial conversations with Brian McTurnan from Altig, and as it sits right now, it looks like they'll be requesting a 1-year renewal at a 3% increase for their space on the second floor. It's 192 square feet. Since we only meet once this month, we'll have that ready for them.
I'll move approval subject to legal review.
Okay.
Second.
Motion to approve and a second voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. Passed. Next. Received communication from Spectrum Aeromet.
Okay, in your packet is a letter from Dean Atchison, and their prospective buyer from Tom Lehonen is here.
Yeah.
From that, Stacy's reviewed this, has been working with their legal counsel. So Spectrum Aeromet, the current owners, are selling the business to Heartland Equity Partners, if I have that right. Tom will be here to back that up. So they basically will assume the lease agreement that Spectrum Aeromet has in place today with us, with some minor revisions. Clean the lease up basically, and then the space that Spectrum was currently leasing from us had various expiration dates. So in the lease agreement that Stacy's been working on, all will have the same termination date, if you will, on that. The new buyers have requested that the East Terminal rate will continue at a 3% escalator each year. So the rent will go up at 3%. That's our standard in the East Terminal. They've asked for consideration in the hangar that instead of a 3% escalator per year, that we change that to CPI, Consumer Price Index, for each of the renewals. They're locked in right now to the end of the term that Spectrum currently has, but it's in future terms that they look for the hangar to be adjusted based on CPI. And they had some proposed language for that. I think we had sent that out to you back in November 29th. I don't know if you have any questions on that. That's a little bit different than what we've had. So we have 3 hangars that we're currently leasing. The one to Spectrum Aeromed, and then it's actually 1 building, but 2 hangars that are leased to Fargo Jet Center. And how the Airport Authority set the lease rates for those hangars was basically accepting the proposal from the tenants. They came in and said, we'll pay you X amount per year over the term of this lease. They basically set what the rate was. The board concurred. It wasn't based really on CPI or any magic formula. Both of the tenants came in and said, here's what we'll pay you year after year. So if we would change this to CPI, that would set a precedence. It's very common, I think, at a lot of businesses to change rent based on CPI. But if you feel differently, we can stay at 3%, or we can change it to CPI as requested by the new owners.
So the CPI, the variance between 3% and the CPI is not much anyway.
No,
It's 12%.
Yeah.
Less.
typically, yeah.
And shrinking.
And shrinking.
Right.
I mean, the CPI is shrinking.
Yeah.
So Tom, I don't know if you have anything to add on behalf of the ownership group, the new ownership
Well,
group?
with regard to, well, first of all, we're delighted to invest here in Fargo, and thank you for considering our request for assumption of the lease. But with regard to CPI, that's common in all the real estate leases that we do. Simply tries to fairly say, hey, the costs in the world are going up by a particular percentage, and that's a fair escalator for a lease. While certainly CPI has been lower the last couple of years, no one knows what it's going to do in the future, and so we just feel that's a fair way to share future cost increases.
And what will the effective date be? You're still targeting for the end of this month, Tom?
We are, yes.
Okay.
December 31st.
We'll work with council here to make sure that the lease agreements are all in place to do that.
How long is the lease agreement?
It's 5 years, I believe, John.
5 with some options. That's correct.
Are you going to be running aircraft out of that hangar?
No, we're going to continue as is, doing assembly of Spectrum's products. Occasionally, I would think, I need to get more familiar with the operation, but I don't believe most of our installations are done up at the Jet Center that are done locally.
So do we have the leases ready? Do we need to vote on this today?
Yes.
So leases are all set. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm more inclined to retain the 3% escalator on the airplane hangar as well. I don't know if this is a case where we can set precedents on any of our other tenants.
I would think we would probably have others requesting the same thing if we're going to do
And then when
CPI.
CPI is above 3%, they're going to come in and ask us to lower to 3%.
Seconded. I'll say that too. So
Well, okay, so we have a motion and a second, so then open for discussion. Any more?
The motion is to approve the assignment with a 3% escalator on the hangar, as well as the base terminal.
Your opinion, Sean?
It's really your desire. And like I say, the CPI has been about half of what the 30% is right now. I don't know if that puts anything in jeopardy with the ownership group, but it's probably in our best interest to keep it at the 3%.
Could we put with any further options forward? Could we put that we'll readdress this again?
On the anniversary date
On
of
the
the renewal,
anniversary.
it certainly could be reviewed again. So at the end of the current term, at the start of the first option, we can certainly review that.
Well, we have some others in the room I'd like to hear from, like Rick. You deal with a lot of rentals. What's your opinion?
Well, I mean, obviously CPI is a lot like an ARM, adjustable rate mortgage. So sometimes the tenant will come on ahead, and sometimes, compared to 3% escalator, the landlord will come on ahead. But on average, I think Steve's right. If you're looking for something with continuity, then you just set it at 3% and leave it at that. A lot of times, quite frankly, you have on the anniversary date, you have to make sure you're coming up with which index you're going with. On what date does that become the target point as far as what you're using? So it's not just an easy, carefree lease, if you will. There's more to it than that when it involves it. Quite honestly, in our world, here locally, we're actually getting away from that. So just simply, we're getting away from CPI involved in lease, only because it's easier for the landlord or property managers to keep track of.
I would think it'd be easier to budget for if you know exactly what's coming versus, but I also see the point when you think you're being charged a percent over what you could be charged. Jim, you have a lot of hangars on the field. Any input on that? 3% versus CPI?
Sure, we'd love to see the CPI.
Yeah.
From your perspective today, I don't know if you have to agree to any terms on where you extend the lease. So perhaps we need to do a little bit more research and see what the market's happening, what's happening in other airports.
Anything else?
My opinion is they're not running aircraft out of the hangars, and so they're not using it as an aircraft base hangar. So if they're getting charged another percent or so and they're unhappy about it, they can find suitable means elsewhere. But for now, I think we should maintain the 3% and not change the precedent. So that's just my opinion.
Okay, ready for the question? Let's do a roll call.
Lind?
Aye.
Isaac?
Aye.
Lind?
Aye.
Haugen?
No. Motion carries.
We'll get the paperwork to you. There's one other item related to this that came yesterday. Stacy's reviewed that. It's the landlord consent that relates to the following leases. So Choice Financial Group has been granted security interest in the assets described for Spectrum Aeromed LLC, and it's similar to what we approved at the last meeting. So if there's default, Spectrum Aeromed's assets would be worked with Choice Financial. So if you have any questions on that?
I'll move approval to accept the landlord waiver and consent.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, voice vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Receive a request, parking concession with SB Plus.
Number
Number
7.
seven.
Oh, I'm sorry, CenturyLink. Yeah.
Okay, so the map that was provided in your packet has CenturyLink requesting an easement along the East Terminal access road to the terminal to put in fiber to the East Terminal. My assumption is, and they haven't confirmed it, it's something to do for UPS, but I don't know that for a fact. So this would be the route. They'll prepare the easement, and then once the line is installed, they do the GPS coordinates of where the line is and bring that to us in a legal description that to get to Stacy, and they'll eventually be recorded. So I'd ask for your concurrence of that.
Okay,
Question, don't we already have an east-west easement on 23rd Avenue? Is it on the north side of the road? I thought we had an east-west easement in there already.
I think it's on the south side. This, I believe, is on the north side of the road. And that the one on the south, I think, is full. I mean, there's not a lot of room left in the south with what's been put in there.
There's no room for one more fiber optic line in there?
I don't believe so. We can have them double check, but their preference was is to put it on the north side, so. But I can have them double check.
Mr. Chair, might be in favor of tabling this request until additional information can be obtained as far as the existing easement and for utilities, and perhaps that cable could be buried in the existing easement rather than creating another easement district or easement area.
okay. Any other discussion on that? Why don't we do that, table it till next meeting? And look into,
We can do that.
okay. Now, SP Plus.
So as you're aware, we received proposals from 3 different firms. The board members scored those proposals and selected SP Plus as the recipient of our next 5-year parking concession contract. Jason Finch and I worked on that this past week when they were here doing the surveys. Stacy provided her review of the lease. Everything is in order. The $2.7 million annual guarantee. They'll be starting a shuttle service here maybe by the end of the week or first part of next week. And all of the other improvements, spending about $100,000 on a corporate parking program. They have the brochures that are already available. They're handing those out to the passengers during the survey last week. And yeah, things seem to be moving along. So I would, I guess, request your concurrence to approve the new parking concession contract with SP Plus for the next 5 years. And then, of course, there's some options that go forward.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can I chat about that real fast? Our advertising campaign that we're putting on TV right now. Can we put some of that, can we, instead of having our commercials saying all the destinations we can get to out of Fargo, can we change our marketing strategy to try and push some of these new services that are being provided to the people in Fargo so that they know that it's what's available? So I know I can get to Jamaica from Fargo.
You know, even if we didn't do that, because that would be costly, just put a trailer on the bottom that could go across now through March, 3 shuttle service or something.
Sure.
You know, something to get it out there. I think that's a good idea.
So I believe there was a number of different services that SP Plus was going to promote with their contract. So can we put some of that stuff out
Just
there?
like a crawling banner.
A crawling banner, yeah.
You want to check with
Yep.
Flint on that? Okay.
Okay.
And even when they do their next set of ads, because I would assume they've already produced them, so that's the only reason I'm thinking of a less expensive option than producing a whole new
Sure.
ad. But maybe for the next set for next year, they incorporate, like you said, some of the extra services actually in the ads.
Agreed.
I think we plan to work with Flint and SP Plus Communications Group to put out a big thing in the
Okay.
forum as well.
Good.
Once they have their dates firm. They've hired the drivers, correct? We have a representative here.
That's awesome.
Yes, the vehicle should be here within, I would say, Jade said the next 48 hours or so, 24 to 48 hours, and then we're supposed to be starting up on Monday.
What kind of vehicle is it?
That I'm not entirely sure. I haven't been apprised of what the exact vehicle is.
Yeah, it's like a 12 to 15 passenger minibus type thing with room for luggage. I don't know the exact route. They were still working on that when they left here on Friday, where the shuttle bus will
They're
go.
getting it worked out as to what's going to be the most smooth route going through.
That's great.
So,
That's great.
Okay, we still have a motion. Ready for the question? Okay, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, passed. Update on renewal of our liability insurance.
Okay, some preliminary information from Mark and Page at North Star Insurance. They are not ready to give us the firm price yet. I guess they kind of wait until the last minute. Our policy expires at the end of December. But in the preliminary, if our annual premium last year was a little over $37,000. So if we take a $5,000 deductible per occurrence, the annual premium would be somewhere between $43,000 and $45,000. If we take the if we don't have the $5,000 deductible per occurrence, that annual premium will be somewhere between $49,000 and $51,000. I hope to have some more information on that this week with what the two options will be. So do you want a deductible or don't you? I would think that we take the deductible and pay the lower annual premium.
Any comments?
No comment.
Well, I know what I do in my own insurance, so I take the deductible.
Yep.
I saw we paid $8 for liability insurance on our new pickup. That was amazing insurance price, so I'll leave it up to you.
Okay.
You're doing a good job with it. It's only costing $8 for the pickup.
So John's the insurance guru.
Just through till March.
Oh.
Still a good price.
Well, still, it's
I don't know if you're gonna Vinny under the bridge.
Do we need a motion on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you'll do is you'll approve the renewal of the airport liability policy, subject to Stacy and I reviewing the information that comes. But that would be the worst case scenario that I proposed.
I'll move it forward, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Move second.
I'll second that.
Second, any further discussion? Hearing none, voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Okay. Adopt a resolution retiring Assistant Chief Barry Wright. Chief, you...
So, yeah,
We're number 10.
yeah, we'll come back to number 10 then. So, yeah, Barry Wrighton is going to retire. His last day is December 14th. Is that correct, Chief? Friday. 29 years, of course, just since October of 2014 with us, but you know, with the state and through the Guard before. So, Chief Bush and Jordan completed the hiring process to fill that assistant chief job from within, and a lead job, and then we have a new firefighter that'll be starting on what day, Chief? 31st. So the process has already been completed. Very efficient. So I think adopt a resolution of appreciation for Assistant Fire Chief Barry Wright would be in order.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, voice vote.
Aye.
And now, MOU update on the compensation study.
So Virginia and I met with Mayor Mahoney and Eric Johnson, the city attorney, last Thursday at the mayor's office. Lasted about an hour and a half. And obviously the two subjects were the very antiquated and outdated memorandum of understanding back in the late 60s. The mayor and Eric did acknowledge that amendment which removed the 10-year dissolution of the agreement, so that essentially that very old agreement does remain in place, with the amendment that was adopted through the minutes here to go from 30,000 to 50,000 back in 1986. And so, I mean, the discussion was basically, can we arrive at some sort of understanding where we remain with the city, or do we part ways and then hire an independent entity to do the work that the city has done? I will say that the biggest rub is that the city of Fargo deems airport employees as city employees. I don't see much budging on that. The mayor and Eric did absolutely acknowledge Chapter 2-06 and the autonomy of the airport and the powers the airport does have. So not going to step on anyone's shoes for purposes of going out and getting grants or purchasing vehicles or things such as that. But in terms of moving forward with the city continuing to do the work they've done, the city is going to deem airport employees as city employees. Eric added to the discussion that if we truly did contract with the city, that we would have to somehow be carved out, and that in his mind that would mean that all accounts and everything would need to be separate, like a separate human resources person. Separate accounting, which Sean and I have talked about, this does exist for purposes of the airport accounts. And then the issue of the compensation study came up, and wondering what our position is, and I said our position remains the same, that this is what has been provided to the city as meeting the change by the city in terms of what he would be compensated. That doesn't seem, it's been deemed as acceptable, and the request from the mayor would be that we have another compensation study be done that's updated from the previous one, since it is 2 years old, and that HR be involved in that, working with whatever entity is chosen to do that, and then, is it Laura Manette, I believe?
Jill.
Be involved with whatever entity that is to do another study. And so I said,
Above and beyond the 2 studies we've already done at the request.
correct. So I said I would take both back and see what your desire would be. I feel as though what we proposed in terms of where we went in and amended the initial MOU, that's not on the table, that we're back to the original one as proposed by the city. But discussions weren't, shut down. One thing I did propose as a suggestion is if somehow an agreement can be made for whatever finance can show to the FAA would be the appropriate amount to be paid, which I made that, I explained that quite clearly as to, budgeted to 90,000 and just waiting for necessary information for the FAA to say, yes, this is the appropriate amount for the city to charge the airport for their services. I offered helping to work with Kent and Dave Anderson out in Bismarck to figure out how to get that information provided, but that absolutely the airport is willing to pay what they're supposed to pay in terms of the services. For purposes of the airport employee versus city employee, I had proposed in an MOU a blatant acknowledgement that 2-06 governs this board and its employees, but for purposes of rendering specific city services, that maybe the board would consider for that and that only reason be defined as a city employee, so as to not have to necessarily carve out the airport employees in that regard. But again, obviously can't make, that was sort of my middle road proposal, and just indicated I'd bring everything back here and then we would go from here.
I would like to note that it was 1 year ago this January that we sat up in this office with Mr. Calander and redlined. It was 1 year ago January. And I just, and now they're just, all that 10 months that they've had this, now they're just saying, oh, no, we're gonna go back. Is that your understanding?
I feel like it's sort of in limbo.
Okay.
Like, not absolutely going back, but
Okay.
certainly what we propose. I mean, it's basically we have the options. We either can work with, try to come up with an agreement. I mean, and I guess personally, it may behoove the parties to try to figure something out, but if not, then part ways from the city and contract with an independent entity.
Well, it seems to me this is just a great way to stall any decision on a compensation package. And that it's been used in the past as the same tactic. And we'll have another study and they'll say, well, this one doesn't meet what we want, and we'll have another study and we'll not meet what they want. I also am concerned that we're going from $50,000 a year payment to the city to $90,000, and nothing's changed. We aren't getting anything more out of the $90,000 than we were the $50,000. And I'm afraid the FAA might say, hey, this is just a transfer of federal funds. The city's just grabbing dollars here. So if the FAA does not approve it, then what's the city going to do? Then where are we? If the FAA says no, because they see this as again, just a way to get more money, then we're stuck in the same position. Maybe it's time we go hire a downtown firm, sever the ties with the city. We only have 9 employees still in the retirement plan with the city. All the rest of the employees are now within ND PERS,
I believe so.
new employees. So that was the main reason we stayed with the city, was they were to be considered city employees only for purposes of retirement. In the document. So it doesn't appear the city wants to acknowledge that piece. They think they're straight city employees. So I think the first issue is, do we do another study? And the second issue is the FAA going to approve the 90,000? Yeah. We don't know, we haven't heard.
We have a vendor here that's providing payroll services and human resources services to us that are not meeting our expectations. And we've tried to work with our vendor for those services, complain to them. We actually had an employee that had human resources issues, that those correspondences were never even brought to Sean's attention. To me, that's a big red flag that they should have been terminated right then and there. So I agree with you. The question I have is, what loose ends are out there as far as the pension and those types of things? Do we have a solution for that? If we were to change vendors for our payroll and human resources services?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the health insurance becomes an issue with a new vendor, but I think they research and find appropriate health insurance. So I mean, they're already doing it. That's what they, Payroll Plus or
Pro Resources.
Pro
sent you
Resources.
the comparison. It's very preliminary.
There's several in town.
So the question that I had was, the only question mark I had, we have a good quote from Pro Resources, but if we were to carve out the airport away from the city, we lose the IT support for the airport that the city is providing. So we don't have a quote on that, do we?
No, nor accounting.
What's that?
Nor
Nor
County.
the accounting.
Nor the accounting. So I would say we have to get a quote for those two and see what that would cost to,
It will be massive.
yeah, I agree.
Well, that's where we can have some common ground. We don't have to leave the city for all of our services. We can still have some services with the city.
That's what Stacy was saying though, is that if we do go away, then we have to carve out everything? Is that what the
sort of-
intent was?
Just sort of a thinking out loud thought by Eric, and he didn't know the answer.
Okay.
But that if we truly were going to be, a vendee, there would have to be a complete separation, and what would that mean? And he didn't know the answer. Just sort of thinking out loud.
Well, let me bring up one other thing. This discussion spurred me to go to the county auditor's office, and because there was so much discussion about whether we are the owners of the airport is the city of Fargo or whether it's the Municipal Airport Authority. And I got all our tax statements from Mr. Montplaisir, the county auditor, and all of the tax statements are listed as Municipal Airport Authority. So then I took the tax statements and I went over to the Register of Deeds, or Registrar's office, they call it now.
You could have just called me.
Well, I'm sorry, but I wanted to go over and find it out myself. And I looked in all the plat books, and I looked up land that we own, that we have purchased over the years, and the land that was deeded by the city for the airport in this agreement. And all of the parcels at Hector International Airport and the farmland are all listed as being owned by the Municipal Airport Authority. So I just, again, look at what is fact and what is assumed, and the assumption currently is these are the City of Fargo employees. And I go, well, even the landlord is a municipal airport authority. So the confusion that is kind of raised here needs to be resolved, and to maintain ties with the city for payroll and the rest of this just adds to the confusion. And I agree we need to find out the cheapest way, the best way for our employees, but we have a responsibility to do it in a manner that is best for the Municipal Airport Authority and the traveling public. So I'd be willing to see if we can carve out something, and but this confusion / animosity that continues to exist about whether they're city employees or not, we need to just resolve it. So
I got the feeling in the discussion that, I mean, there's an acknowledgement that, I mean, clearly this is a separate, distinct municipal entity. There's no doubt about that. And that is the autonomy of the power of the board is that. There is also that part of the statute where the mayor, and with the vote of the commission, they can dissolve the board and appoint themselves.
yeah,
Which was spoken of very briefly. What I had proposed is, with if there were to be a new memorandum of understanding, an absolute, included in it, a recognition of the independence and autonomy of this board, and then only for purposes of the services the city would provide, where airport employees be deemed city employees only for that purpose. And I mean, I didn't get a yay or a nay, and I don't have a yay or a nay here, but that was sort of the middle of the road I could come up with. And I know, this started off as a pretty symbiotic relationship back in the late 60s. I wasn't even born yet. And I just think over time it's evolved and for whatever reason eroded some.
The auditor, Mr. Montplaisir, also stated that, that the city of Fargo deeded over all the public school lands to the school board. The city doesn't own the schools either. So there's another organization out there that, does the city think that all the teachers and people in the schools work for them? I mean, it's the same type of relationship. Well, I would like to see if there's a way that we can do some private enterprise do our payroll and what can be done. And if we still need IT or other things to be done by the city, we can review that.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think the city has met our expectations with accounting and IT. I don't think they've met our expectations with payroll processing and human resources services. So I would like to see a written formal plan as to how we could change vendors for those services, what it would cost, what services could be provided.
We have that from Pro Resources.
Does it address the pension and the
Pension won't change because the precedence has already been set. The Park District employees are in the city pension as well, so there's no issues with
so we can
pension.
continue to pay in the pension just like as we have done?
Park District has, so there's no reason why another political subdivision shouldn't be able to.
So you don't see any
Vested.
hurdles today, Sean, as to why we couldn't act today on changing the vendor for those services?
No, other than the timing of it, year end and start of the new year. They can, we'd have to put out a request for proposals. I'm not aware, there might be one other firm in the country that can provide all of the turnkey human resources functions that Pro Resources does bring to the table. That's going to take some time if you want to receive proposals on that. I mean, there's companies all over that do just payroll. Grand Forks Airport uses a company in Fargo to just do payroll. It's very, very affordable. But if you're looking for the whole turnkey HR stuff, it's a company like Pro Resources that has that option.
There again, we still have no decision by the FAA whether $90,000 a year is going to be approved.
Right. Yeah. So the thing is we still
they're
have
really holding the card here.
We still have an agreement that's in place. Nothing's changed. And until the city works with the FAA to explain their rationale for going from the $50,000 to the $90,000+ amount, I think we have to wait for that answer first. I don't know when that's going to take place.
Well, I know you've had communication with the city, but I also saw the mayor requested we finalize that. But that's not up to the airport authority, is it?
And I explained that, and it really, you've budgeted for that 90,000, I think, starting in 2017.
Correct.
So the money is sitting there. And I think there's a little bit of miscommunication there, so why isn't that not being paid? And I said, well, it can't be paid unless and until the reasoning behind it is provided to the FAA and they sign off on it. I said, the money is there. Once that is given, the airport's more than willing to make that payment.
It's in the FAA policy. That's what we have to follow.
I think that's been more than explicitly explained to them a number of times. I think that's not even a question at this point. But the question is, when are they going to get the paperwork completed and into the FAA is more the question. So is that being handled? I mean, did they say yes, they're gonna push it through this time, or?
What I indicated is I would try to work as a liaison between Kent and Dave Anderson out at Bismarck to have them be in communication to figure out what is it that Mr. Anderson needs that Mr. Costin needs to provide.
And
So
no one
that's-
has reached out to you thus far?
Well, I mean, that was Thursday that we discussed that, and then I wanted to bring this to the board before going back to Eric and what can I do to help this transpire.
Okay.
As far as getting a tax ID number, she can have that in about 15 minutes. So if that's an issue, we can get one, but I don't know what the consequences are for getting one and not using it.
I think it goes stagnant after a year, if I remember, if you don't utilize it.
And you'd be applying for an employee identification number, right?
Same
Yeah,
thing,
and-
right?
yep.
They're different actions.
Go ahead and get one.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But you're right. It takes 15 minutes.
It takes about 3.
Yeah. Well, you're faster on a computer than
No, my legal assistant's faster.
We'd like to look at the IT piece separately from payroll and all the rest of that and see if there's.
I've not heard of any issues with IT, accounting, those types of services with the city, unless, Sean, you've just been silent on that.
No, I think I know Darren works a lot closer, Joan, than I do with IT, but it's worked out really well.
Yeah.
We pay for whatever we're using in the bandwidth on the fiber and stuff. Accounting, we can have a good relationship with Kent and his staff down there on the accounting side of it. It's a great program. It's easy to use. It's very automated. So those two things, I don't see any issues there. But if you want to find a IT alternate, I guess we contact somebody like Network Center or Ike Bailey. I don't know. There's companies out there that do that. I guess see what it would cost to set up something of that magnitude.
Will you get a quote? Just so that we cover our bases in case we end up getting kicked out of all the services. We know what we're getting into at least.
So we'll call one vendor, Network Center or somebody, I don't know, unless Darren's got some other ideas. We'll find somebody out there that come in and say, okay, set us up, and I have no idea what that would cost.
Sure.
Well, in your discussion, basically with the city, with the 90,000, I mean, for the MOU, they didn't break out. This is for insurance. This is for handling payroll, this is for IT, this is for, we haven't gotten any of that, it's just a lump sum of 90,000.
Correct.
And it went from 50 to 90, and so,
If there's background information on the rationale for that number,
Yeah.
I don't recall seeing
well,
it.
I would think they're gonna have to provide that to the FAA.
Oh, definitely.
So that should give us a pretty clear vision of what they're charging and what we would be charged for if we were to maintain IT with the city, but all the rest go to pro resources. Okay. So we'll continue to work on the MOU and discussion with the city on updates, right?
So my marching orders would be back to Eric Johnson and discuss, you know, some of what we've discussed here and see if we can start to carve out portions of it and value it.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. I don't think we need to beat this dead horse anymore, so. All right. I've lost my agenda. Okay, airport construction security update.
Closeout for Grant 47 was submitted to the FAA. We had like a $5.8 million some dollar grant, and we didn't use all of it. I think we're going to turn back $41,000 some dollars to the FAA. It was discretionary funds, so it goes back into the FAA pool on that grant. So hopefully in the next few days, the FAA will finish the closeout of that. I think Terry's ready for a Skyway update at our next meeting in January. Do we have anything else? I guess I know of. Does John or Jeff have anything? Okay. PFC application 9 is pending at the FAA office in Bismarck. As you recall, we had 90-some projects. I don't know, it was a number of projects that we were going to put in PFC application 08, but the time for the FAA to go through all of those just wasn't sufficient. So they went through the easy ones that was approved in PFC application 08, and we're collecting on that. So now number 9 is going to pick up the rest of the projects. And hopefully by the end of the month, the FAA approves that, and we'll go out and notify all of the air carriers of the pending application and get their concurrence. So that'll
There's
play out.
roughly $24 million of projects in that application.
So that's all that I have.
Anything that we need to be looking at for the upcoming legislative session, monies through the legislature? Did you look at the governor's budget or anything that could impact us?
Yeah, we're following that through the Airport Association of North Dakota, so they have retained a lobbyist on behalf of the Airport Association. One of the big items that they'll be pushing through is to allow the 8 airports in the state to enter into contracts with the transportation network companies, Uber and Lyft, to give us the ability to collect funds for drop-offs and pickups. So that's one of the main items that the Airport Association has. The other is to follow up on the proposed $50 million that was talked about this summer that would go to airport infrastructure over the biennium. And they'll be working with the legislature on trying to move that forward. I don't know if that was in the governor's budget or not, but it's something that Al Carlson, before his defeat, was talking about with a representative from Dickinson to have a pool of $50 million for airport construction. So we'll be following up on that as well. That's the only 2 items that I'm aware of from the Airport Association standpoint.
Okay.
Cat 2 approach. Maybe see if we can squeeze out some pennies for that.
The update on the $12.5 million grant and the $1 billion thing is maybe after the first of the year is the earliest that we're going to hear about that. We've engaged Senator Hoeven. He and his staff will be sending a letter to the Secretary of Transportation in support of our request. That usually helps to see if that will be awarded. So that's what we worked with at this point right now to see if they can convince the DOT that our grant request is worthy of being awarded.
Can I piggyback on something that Sean mentioned? You mentioned the Uber that is a possibility. Should we be proactive and look at geofencing costs, those types of things that would make that technology work for us?
Yeah, it's already available through AAAE. Once
Okay.
we enter into a contract with them, when we get contracts, they can geofence. And I think we've done some geofencing now, haven't we, Darren? With both Uber and Lyft, so.
Oh, we have, okay.
The only place that their apps will work is on the crossover road
Okay.
out here. So when you see vehicles parked on the road south of the parking lot, this is the only place on the airport property that their app will work.
Okay.
So we've already done the geofencing
Great.
for that. But once we enter into an agreement, then AAA has this clearinghouse process where they know every time that a TNC comes onto the airport property, and TNC will send you a check, and then AAA will have the information to see if it matches up with what they report. I included in your packet this thing for this air cargo conference in February. I don't know, I was asked to attend, but I don't know that we have time to, but I put it in there FYI if anybody's interested in going.
Where is that?
It's in Las Vegas, February 10th through the 12th.
That's right.
So all of our representatives that we've been working with, both FedEx and UPS, will be attending, but I don't know if it's going to work out or not.
Looks like an interesting agenda.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if anybody's interested in going, we can approve that, or it's really up to you.
We can do that in January.
Unless we want to approve it now and then
The early bird
Well, yeah.
rate is January 10th.
Yeah.
We need to-
Okay.
Mr.
Well,
Chairman, I move approval to authorize any board member or staff at Sean's discretion to attend the Air Cargo Symposium in Las Vegas.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none. Carries. Anything else? Going back to the MOU, I found the paragraph in here. This is the agreement that is currently in place, although it's dated 69. It says on item 6, further agreed and understood, the city will provide the authority with the use of its treasurer auditing department and will continue to regard the employees of the airport authority as city employees for the purpose of the city employees pension plan. Thought I'd throw it out.
Can't be more black and white. We just can't get it.
Okay. All right. Any other items? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned.